I used to think grief was something that settled over time, the way dust eventually stops drifting and simply becomes part of the furniture. 31 years had passed since my daughter's memorial service, yet somehow the weight of it still lived in the corners of my life, quiet, familiar, almost polite in the way it lingered. You never expect sorrow to become routine, but mine had. I'd learned to function around it the way you learn to walk with a limp. Slowly, carefully, always aware of what used to be whole. My name is Daniel Mercer. I'm 64 years old, and for most of my adult life, people have known me as the man who lost a daughter too young. They don't say it out loud anymore, not after so many years, but I see it sometimes when old friends introduce me to new ones. It's in the pause, the gentle shift in their expression, as if they're bracing for the part of my story they hope won't surface in conversation. People don't like being reminded that life can take something from you without warning. And truthfully, I stopped reminding them. I stopped talking about Emily around the same time I stopped blaming myself, which is to say, never fully, but enough to keep living. I remarried eventually, built a quiet, careful life with routines that never strayed too far from center. Early morning coffee, a job at the hardware store, occasional fishing trips with my brother, the kind of life that doesn't demand too much because I'd already lost enough. For years I believed I had made peace with the uncertainty. Emily had been 12 when she disappeared, too old to forget, too young to understand why she never came home. The authorities found remains 3 years later, partial, damaged, but consistent. That was the word they used, not certain, not definitive, just consistent. And because every expert told us consistency was as close as we were going to get, we accepted it. We buried a symbolic casket, held each other through it, and tried to move forward. I thought I had succeeded. I thought I had outlived the sharpest edges of the loss. But grief doesn't disappear. It just waits. Patiently. Silently. And sometimes it returns in ways you can't prepare for. Like the phone call I received last night. But before that moment shattered the fragile order of my life. Everything was painfully ordinary. I'd spent the evening reading in the den, a habit I'd picked up when sleep became unreliable. My wife Sarah had already turned in for the night. The house was quiet in the way only old houses can be. Pipes humming, wood settling, the soft heartbeat of a refrigerator cycling in the dark. It was the kind of silence that had become comforting, even protective. I had no reason to expect it would be the last peaceful moment I'd have for a very long time. People assume the past stays where you leave it, but it has a way of circling back when it wants something. And on that night, at exactly 3:11 a.m., it wanted my attention. That was when the phone began to ring. I remember staring at it, confused at first, the sound foreign enough at that hour that my tired mind struggled to place it. But by the third ring, a cold heaviness pooled in my chest, the instinctual dread of someone who has lived long enough to know that late-night calls rarely bring anything good. I hadn't answered it yet, but I already felt the shift. The way the air in the room seemed to tighten around me. I didn't know then that my life was about to split cleanly into two timelines. Everything before that phone call, and everything after. And I certainly didn't know that a stranger on the other end would claim something impossible, something that would reopen a wound I had spent half a lifetime trying to heal. Something that would make me question the truth I'd built my entire life around. They would tell me my daughter was alive, only they would use a name I had never heard before. When I finally answered the phone, my voice came out rough, the way it does when you're pulled too quickly out of sleep. Hello? For a moment, all I heard was static. Soft, irregular, like someone adjusting a receiver. Then a woman's voice emerged, steady but urgent. Is this Daniel Mercer? Something about the formal tone made my spine stiffen. Yes. Who is this? My name is Dr. Rowan Hale. I'm calling from Northbridge Medical Center's emergency wing. I'm contacting you regarding your daughter. I felt my pulse falter. My daughter? Yes, sir. A young woman was brought in tonight. She identified you as her father. She's asking for you. The silence that followed didn't feel real. It felt staged, like someone had hit pause on my entire life. I closed my eyes, swallowed, tried to steady the shaking in my hands. You must have the wrong number, I said carefully. My daughter passed away 3 decades ago. Dr. Hale hesitated, just long enough for fear to slip in through the seams. Sir, the woman here matches multiple identifiers we were told only the family would know, and she insisted we contact you. She said you would understand. I almost hung up, almost told her this was some cruel prank or a clerical nightmare. But then she continued. She also mentioned a birthmark, a small one beneath the right collarbone shaped like a teardrop. She said you used to call it her raindrop good luck charm. My breath left me all at once. That wasn't on any missing persons report. That wasn't in the news. That wasn't in the coroner's records. That was something only Emily, my late wife, and I knew. An ordinary detail that had lived in the soft, private corners of our family. How did she know that? I whispered. She said she remembered it tonight, during what appeared to be a dissociative event. She became distressed, insisted she knew who she really was. The name she gave us was not Emily Mercer, though. Here it came, the impossible part. What name? I asked. Lena Calder. A name I had never heard in my life, yet spoken with the kind of conviction that made my blood run cold. She claims she's been living under that identity for decades, the doctor continued. She also said she believes she wasn't supposed to remember anything until now. That's when the room began to tilt, slowly, nauseously, as if gravity itself had lost confidence in the truth. Something in me rebelled at the absurdity of it. Another part of me, the quieter and older part, the part that had never fully stopped hoping, whispered, "If there is even the slightest chance." My voice cracked. How do I know this call is real? A reasonable question, one I forced out through rising panic. Dr. Hale didn't react defensively. Instead, she gave me procedural verification numbers, the hospital's public switchboard line, and instructions to cross-check the outbound call. I did. Hands trembling, phone shaking. Everything matched. Every number was legitimate. Every verification passed. The stakes rose from impossible to terrifying. "Mr. Mercer," she said softly when I returned to the call, "the young woman is stable but frightened. She asked for you repeatedly. I believe your presence may help." I looked toward the hallway where Sarah slept, unaware that our world had just cracked open. The clock read 3:19 a.m. "I'll be there," I said, though my throat felt too tight to speak. "But I need you to tell me, does she look anything like Emily once did?" There was a pause. When Dr. Hale finally answered, her voice held something I couldn't name. "Sir, yes, she does. Enough that every nurse who has seen her has commented on the resemblance." My heart stuttered painfully. "Please come safely," she added. "We'll be expecting you." When I hung up the phone, the house felt unfamiliar, like a replica of my home rather than the real thing. Doors, walls, furniture, everything looked exactly as it had an hour earlier, yet none of it belonged to the world I was suddenly living in. Because if that woman in the hospital truly resembled my family, if she truly knew the secret birthmark, if she truly remembered something buried for decades, then the story I had accepted for half my life, the one about my daughter's death, might have been wrong. And if that was wrong, then something else, something much larger, had been orchestrated in its place. The night felt unnaturally still as I stepped outside, the cold settling on my skin like a warning. I didn't tell Sarah the full truth before leaving. I only whispered that the hospital needed me for something urgent. She mumbled a soft question in her sleep, but I backed away before she could fully wake. I wasn't ready to explain something I barely understood myself. The car's engine groaned to life, its headlights cutting through a dense, low fog. For a moment, I simply sat there, gripping the wheel, listening to the hum of the motor, as if waiting for it to talk me out of what I was doing. But the doctor's words, the raindrop birthmark, kept echoing in my mind. That one detail had cracked reality clean open. The roads were empty, long stretches of ghost-lit pavement unfolding ahead of me. Trees blurred into dark silhouettes, and every few miles a streetlight glowed like an isolated lighthouse in a sea of gray. I kept expecting the phone to ring again, for someone to correct the mistake, for the night to snap back into place. But nothing did. The world stayed unnervingly quiet. As the miles passed, panic and hope wrestled inside me. I replayed the same questions over and over. What if this is a scam? What if someone studied the case files? What if the resemblance isn't real? What if the resemblance is real? But the deeper I went into my thoughts, the more another question surfaced, one I had avoided for years. What if the remains we buried weren't hers? We'd accepted uncertainty because we were drowning in it. The experts said the odds were high. The timeline fit. The clothing fit. Exhaustion had done the rest. We'd wanted closure so desperately that likely became true, and true became the story we trained ourselves to live with. But now that story had teeth again, and it was biting back. About halfway to the hospital, I pulled into an empty gas station lot just to steady my breathing. The fluorescent lights flickered above me, casting a sickly glow over the cracked pavement. I sat there, elbows on the steering wheel, forehead pressed against my hands. If the girl in that hospital room was Emily, truly Emily, then someone had erased her from the world and replaced her with another identity. And people don't just vanish into new names by accident. I thought about the years after her disappearance, the endless search efforts, the faces of investigators who looked increasingly defeated. I thought about the way every phone call back then had jolted my heart into my throat, and how eventually those calls stopped coming. Silence replaced uncertainty. Acceptance replaced desperation. And now here I was, racing toward a truth that might unravel everything. When I finally reached the hospital, dawn was a faint smear of color on the horizon, pale pink edging into the night, like the sky itself was waking slowly. Northbridge Medical Center stood tall and sterile, its wide glass windows reflecting a world that didn't match the one inside my chest. I parked crookedly, barely conscious of my own movements. The sliding doors opened with a metallic hiss, and the warmth of the lobby hit me like a wave. A nurse at the reception desk lifted her head immediately. "Mr. Mercer?" she asked. My heart jumped. "Yes." "She's awake. Dr. Hale will meet you shortly." She, not the patient, not the woman, just she, as though they already considered her someone significant to me. I waited in a small intake area, the kind with stiff chairs and bland artwork that tried and failed to make hospitals feel comforting. I caught my reflection in the dark window opposite me. Gray hair, tired eyes, a man bracing for impact. A man who looked older than he had an hour ago. Then I heard footsteps. Dr. Hale appeared at the end of the hallway. Her expression was composed, but her eyes held something gentler, something almost apologetic. "Mr. Mercer," she said, "thank you for coming." "How is she?" The question tumbled out before I could steady it. "She's disoriented," Dr. Hale said, "but calm. She's asked for you several times." My pulse hammered. "Does she..." look like her?" I asked. She considered her answer carefully. "She looks like someone who has been carrying the wrong life for a very long time." The room seemed to tilt beneath me. "Before you see her," she continued, "I need you to understand, memory can fracture in complicated ways. She may recognize you instantly, or not at all, and what she remembers may not come in order." I nodded, though my mind was barely holding on to her words. Dr. Hale gestured toward the hallway. "She's waiting." I stood legs unsteady, as if I were about to walk through a doorway that separated two versions of my life. The one I'd lived for 31 years, and the one that was about to begin, because on the other side of that door was someone who might be my daughter, or someone who had been forced to forget she ever was. Dr. Hale led me down a quiet hallway toward a door marked only by a room number. No name, no labels. The air felt heavier with every step, as if the building itself understood the gravity of what waited on the other side. My thoughts tumbled into each other. Memories of Emily's laugh, the way she held my hand when she was little, the last morning I saw her alive. Each one flickered like a slideshow I couldn't stop. We paused at the door. "She's awake," Dr. Hale said softly. "And she's calm now, but be prepared. Identity recovery can be overwhelming, for both sides." I nodded, though I wasn't sure anything could prepare me for what was coming. When the door opened, the first thing I saw was her silhouette, sitting upright on the hospital bed, hands folded in her lap. The room was dim, lit mostly by a small lamp beside her. Shadows stretched long across the floor. Then she lifted her head. For a moment, my entire body forgot how to breathe. She looked older, of course. A woman now, not the 12-year-old girl who vanished. Her hair was shorter, darker, uneven at the ends. Her face was thinner than Emily's had been, marked by years I hadn't witnessed. But her eyes, those eyes, were the same storm gray I had memorized before she ever learned to write her name. Her lips trembled. "Dad?" The word hit me like a blow. Not because she said it, but because of how she said it. Quietly, cautiously, like she was tasting it for the first time in a lifetime. I stepped closer without realizing it. I don't know what's real anymore," I managed. "But I'm here." A tear slid down her cheek. "I thought you'd be angry," she whispered. "Why would I be angry?" "Because I forgot you. Because I forgot everything." I shook my head, unable to speak. She reached for me, hesitant, as though she feared I might vanish if she moved too quickly. When her hand touched mine, something inside me buckled. Her palm was cold. Her fingers were trembling. But the shape of her hand, God, it was familiar. Just as I was about to speak, she pulled her sleeve up slightly, exposing the small raindrop-shaped birthmark near her collarbone. "It came back to me," she said, all at once, like it had been sealed shut until tonight. Before I could respond, Dr. Hale stepped forward. "Mr. Mercer, there's something you should know. We ran preliminary internal checks on the patient's listed identity, Lena Calder. None of her documents trace back beyond the mid-1990s. No birth record, no early medical files, no school enrollment. Every anchor point you'd expect from a real childhood is missing." My stomach dropped. "Missing," I repeated. "As in lost?" Dr. Hale shook her head. "As in erased." The room felt smaller suddenly, air thinning as the implications wrapped around me. Someone hadn't just taken Emily. Someone had built an entire false person in her place. "Who would do that?" I asked. "We don't know yet," Dr. Hale said. But her fingerprints hit on an old municipal database, a sealed classification. I've never seen a civilian profile marked this way. She hesitated before adding, Someone went to great lengths to bury her past. The woman, Emily, Lena, whoever she had been forced to become, looked between us, confusion tightening her features. "I keep seeing flashes," she said. "A room with metal shelves, a man's voice, someone telling me I belong to the system now, and someone else arguing, someone who didn't want me taken." Her breathing quickened. "It feels like the memories are crawling out of a locked trunk," she whispered. "Pieces. Faces without names. I don't know whose life I've lived all these years. I just know it wasn't mine." I sat beside her, steadying her hand in mine. "Whatever happened, we'll figure it out together." She nodded shakily. "There's something else. A number. It keeps repeating in my mind. I don't know why." She swallowed hard. "It's written on a tag, like the ones they put on file boxes." "What number?" 7 digits, starting with a 0. She closed her eyes, focusing. 094317. She stopped. A tremor crossed her face. "That's not right," she murmured. "It's missing something." Before I could press further, Dr. Hale's pager buzzed. She glanced at it, then her expression shifted to something alarmed. "Mr. Mercer, it seems there's a security request regarding this patient. Someone accessed her digital chart less than 5 minutes ago from an off-network terminal." My heartbeat thundered. "Is that bad?" I asked. Dr. Hale looked up, her voice low. "It means someone who should not know she is here already does." On instinct, I turned toward the door, just as the hallway lights outside flickered, and somewhere in the distance, a loud metallic click echoed, like a lock being undone, or put into place. The woman on the bed tightened her grip on my hand. "Dad," she whispered, "I think they're coming back."